Hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Lily. I'm 19 years old, and I am the most naive person in the world. No, seriously, I'm just a fool who was easily deceived by some marriage swindlers. And the fact that I was born and raised in a small town doesn't justify my foolishness. I am still very ashamed to tell my story. But I want to be honest from the beginning to the end, because an honest and noble person was the one who saved me. When I turned 18, I suddenly found out that my grandfather, who died when I was a kid, had left me a good sum of money. There was a clause, however, that I could spend this money in only one way, to pay for my studies at a university. But I was still very happy. Before I found out about the money, my prospects for the future were limited to my routine work on my parents' farm. But now I could get an education and figure out how to modernize our family business. My parents did not understand my choice. They scolded my deceased grandfather for hiding this money from them, and me, because I wanted to leave for the big city. But I was determined. Moreover, my grandfather left me a detailed financial plan on how I should split the money to cover not only my tuition fees and small apartment rent, but also moderate pocket expenses. I was very enthusiastic about my new life. I had no friends at the university or in the whole city, but I was fine with it. I knew that other students perceived me as a silly girl, but it was only their opinion, so I didn't pay any attention to it. Everything was fine, until I got attacked on the street. I was on my way home from the library late in the evening. I was listening to music with my headphones on and reading something on my smartphone, so I did not notice the group of guys surrounding me before it was already too late. There were 4 of these guys, and their faces were covered by bandanas. I froze and could not utter a sound. One of them snatched my handbag from my hands, and the other took my smartphone. But when I got really scared was the moment when the 3rd guy grabbed my hair and complimented my pretty face in a sinister voice. I panicked. I cried out, "Leave me alone!" I even burst into tears. I was never taught how to stand up for myself, so the only thing I could think of was to pray for help. And my prayer was heard. Help actually came. Some nimble girl suddenly jumped out of the darkness like a superheroine. She screamed in a scary voice and swore, mixing Spanish and English with a strong Hispanic accent as she yelled. I could hardly understand what she was talking about, but it seemed like she had threatened the robbers to call the police. She was very fiercely swinging her bag, and it seemed to me she had even hit a couple of the thugs on their heads. Anyway, the robbers retreated under this girl's pressure. Like, they fled, leaving my stuff on the ground. I burst into tears again, this time from relief, and I hugged my savior. This was how I met Ramona. It turned out that she studied at the same university as me, and, like me, was kind of an outsider among students. They made fun of Ramona because of her broken English. She, in turn, had too much dignity to make any complaints to the administration. I admired her character and her courage. We became best friends, and I soon asked her if she wanted to live together with me in the apartment I rented. Living with Ramona was fun and interesting. She always found ways to cheer me up. And when Ramona suddenly became silent and sad, I easily understood that my bestie had some problems. I wanted to be a good friend to Ramona, so I did not wait for her to come out of her funk, and rushed to find out what happened and how I could help. It turned out that Ramona was upset because of her cousin, Fernando. Well, at this point, I found out that Ramona didn't come to the USA alone, but she was accompanied by her cousin. But Fernando, unlike his cousin, did not get accepted to the university. He was running out of money, and soon he would have no choice but to return to his small town in Colombia. Ramona was worried that Fernando would not be able to save money for a second attempt to come to the United States in search of a better life. I still felt like I owed Ramona at least a favor, so I said that we could invite Fernando to stay with us in this apartment, especially considering that we had a spare room. At first, Ramona did not believe that I would really do that, but as soon as she realized that I really meant it, she was so happy, and she immediately called her cousin. This day did not even come to an end before Fernando was standing at the door with his suitcase. When the bell rang, Ramona was making dinner, so I went to open the door. And as soon as I let him in, he suddenly attacked me with kisses! Well, I mean, These were light kisses on the cheeks, but for me, it was so unexpected that I was totally lost. And also very embarrassed. I had never experienced this kind of physical intimacy with a guy, let alone the guy I just met for the first time in my life. And when Ramona came out of the kitchen and set me free from her cousin's arms, I was finally able to raise my eyes up from the floor. And that's when I saw that Fernando was incredibly handsome. I was glad that Ramona was standing next to me. Otherwise, I would not have been able to say a word in his presence. We spent our first evening getting to know each other in a relaxed and friendly manner. However, I could not help but steal looks at Fernando every once in a while. At his beautiful hair, muscular arms, at his powerful torso under his thin t-shirt. Oh, I tried very hard to think of Fernando like he was just a friend, but I had to face the truth. I had a crush on this guy. Well, from that day on, the life of the three of us together had started. From the very beginning, I decided that we wouldn't split the costs of rent and food. Ramona and Fernando did not have any money at all. I was much luckier in this regard, so I decided that I would pay for everything. My friends realized that I was taking care of them and tried to live quite modestly. They seemed to be such good friends for me. But soon Fernando destroyed our friendship because he wanted more from me. In less than a few weeks, he began courting me. He was showing me really clear signs of attention that I couldn't pretend I didn't notice. When Fernando finally made his move, I realized that I could no longer resist. I wanted us to become a couple. I shared my thoughts with Ramona. I thought she would be happy if her best friend and cousin became a couple. And yes, she supported me, but only verbally. When Fernando and I started to behave like a couple, she clearly got in our way. You see, Fernando was a passionate guy and took every chance to hug me and kiss me. And I saw that he was ready to go further as soon as possible. I wasn't ready for that yet. But I welcomed his signs of affection. But Ramona wouldn't leave us alone for more than 10 minutes. She kept coming in my room all the time without knocking. She accompanied Fernando and me anywhere we would go. Whether it was to the movies or to a coffee shop. She would even try to sit between me and Fernando so that we could not hug or hold hands. Finally, I had enough and decided to find out what was wrong. We talked, and Ramona told me that she was raised in a conservative family and simply could not allow anything to happen between unmarried people in her presence. Suddenly, Fernando entered the room where we were talking and did not even try to pretend that he was not eavesdropping. He stated that if this was the only problem, then he was ready to marry me as soon as possible. Fernando proposed to me, and of course I said yes! We set up the closest possible wedding date. And Fernando moved out of our apartment until the ceremony. He wanted to do everything right. Ramona and I decided to have a bachelorette party, just for the two of us. We spent a day at the spa, and then had dinner at a nice restaurant. I wanted us to take a walk back home to breathe in the fresh air and enjoy the lights of the city at night. When Ramona and I passed a nightclub, I noticed a suspiciously familiar group of guys near the entrance. It seemed to me that they were those same robbers who Ramona saved me from. And it seemed to me that my Fernando was standing next to them. I grabbed Ramona by the elbow to draw her attention to them, but she suddenly dragged me in the opposite direction. We crossed the road in front of the moving cars, and then Ramona caught a taxi and literally pushed me into it. I didn't understand anything, but Ramona said that we didn't need to find out if those were the same guys in order to avoid any problems. And she called me stupid for thinking that one of them was Fernando. It was really odd and painful. Ramona had never been so rude to me. The truth was revealed on the very next day. My wedding ceremony with Fernando was interrupted by the most ridiculous way. A noisy, emotional Colombian woman who turned out to be Ramona's mother rushed in and pulled Fernando away from me. She explained in bad English that these two, Ramona and Fernando, were not cousins, but lovers. They wanted to move to the United States together. And when Fernando's visa was about to expire, they decided that he should marry an American in order to avoid deportation. All this was Ramona's plan. She noticed a silly girl at her university, persuaded Fernando's friends to stage an attack on me, and after that, they played out the whole charade together. But Ramona's mother did not support her daughter's vicious plans, And as soon as she found out how far things had gone, she borrowed money for a flight to the US and came to my wedding to protect me from making a huge mistake. It was Ramona's mother, the very honest and noble person who saved me from everything except a broken heart. And this is something more than just not being successful in love. Since my failed wedding, I live alone. I don't communicate with anyone except my teachers. I don't trust anyone, and I don't want to make any friends ever again.